There's been a lot of noise across the country heading into this series and before each game, but for each tip off, from each tip off to the final whistle, the Sun have been locked in, professional, and taking care of business. What does it say to the professionality of this team that you've been able to shut out the noise?
Honestly, it's been a lot of nonsense. I think in my 11-year career, I've never experienced the racial comments from the Indiana Fever fan base. We had her face on a serious matter that happened in this world, and it's unacceptable, honestly. And yeah, there's no place for it, and we've been professional throughout the whole entire thing, but I've never been called the things that I've been called on social media, and there's no place for it. And basketball is headed in a great direction, but nah, we don't want fans that are going to degrade us and call us racial names. I mean, we already see what's happening in the world and what we have to deal with in that aspect. And we come to play basketball for our job and it's fun, but we don't want to go to work every day and have social media blown up over things like that. It's uncalled for, and something needs to be done, whether it's them checking their fans or this league checking. There's no time for it anymore.
Terrika, there is no time for it anymore, is the last thing that Alyssa Thomas said in that post game. That was after game 2, after the Connecticut Sun had secured an advance to the next round into the semifinals after they finished beating the Indiana Fever in the first round. And we were both at that game. I was at that post game presser, and I was shocked. I was a little taken aback. Not because the things that Alyssa Thomas was talking about are not things that we haven't all been aware of that have been occurring this season, but I was taken aback because you don't normally hear Alyssa Thomas outspoken in this way. I'm not saying that she can't and she never has and doesn't have the ability, but she's not the player you normally hear something like this from, this kind of statement, speaking up. And so one, that just let me understand like how important it is, how serious it's gotten. But also I have to say I was honestly really proud of her when I heard that statement. And I want to say proud is probably the overwhelming emotion I felt at that time after I heard Alyssa Thomas's comments.
I would say that I am not surprised that it got to this point, only because this is a league of women who have shown us throughout the years that they have no problem standing up and speaking up. And that,
for sure,
that voice that has been in the front hasn't always been the same. There, at one moment, that voice was Maya Moore. At one moment, that voice was Ariel Atkins for the Washington Mystics. At one time, that voice was it was Natasha Cloud at one point. So the voice has been different in different moments, but the sentiment has always been the same, that this is a league that has always based itself on inclusivity, that it has always prided itself on being a voice for the voiceless, that it has always been a league that has no problem standing up to injustices.
Absolutely.
And no matter if that injustice occurs with those in our world or even within the 144 who play it, I think that's one of the things that I love the most about the WNBA. And so I am not surprised, while it is quite a surprise to see that it is Alyssa Thomas, who's usually very quiet and more reserved as it relates to public speaking on certain matters. It was great to once again just be reassured that this is still a league that is not going to put up or tolerate certain kinds of things, no matter where they come from.
For sure. And you're right. I'm not surprised by the WNBA players, and I want to be clear, the players speaking up, but it is because it is that it's AT why it surprised me, because Natasha Cloud always uses her platform. She's on Twitter, she speaks out, but because that was one of the examples you cited. But Alyssa Thomas, we know on the court she's a force. And but off the court, she just always seems a little bit more reserved, like you said, at least from my observations from the outside looking in. And so, look, she's talking about a problem that's permeated the league all season, and this is not an issue per se that's new to this league. This league has dealt with misogyny, with racism, with homophobia, with all kinds of things against it. But for Alyssa Thomas to note that in her 11-year career, this is the worst it's been, and she pointed to a particular fan base, and she pointed to the Indiana Fever fan base. And that made some people upset. They didn't like that she did that, but we cannot invalidate her experience because she's talking about her experience. And from her experience, it's Indiana Fever fans, where she's received a lot of vitriol and racial comments, remarks, right? I'm going to say racist. She didn't even use the word racist, but remarks that are just unacceptable and have no place. And there's a lot of it happening online with people feeling like they can say anything they want online and having access to the players via social media. And, so a lot of people say, well, what, you can't stop it, but that cannot be the answer. And these players are saying, no, we're not just going to accept this. This is not going to be something we accept for purposes of growth. So we're going to have to find a solution to it. And, there was a lot that happened as a result of Alyssa Thomas making these comments. Several players ended up being asked about it and spoke out. So including Caitlin Clark was asked, Aaliyah Boston was asked, many of the Fever teammates, Brittany Griner was asked. So several players around the league were asked, and they all rejected, racism, homophobia, any kind of misogyny, anything. They rejected any kind of hateful speech at all and rhetoric, but it led to a number of statements, including one from the WNBA, which they posted something on their accounts shortly after, almost right after, I think, Alyssa Thomas made her remarks.
Yep.
And, some people felt the WNBA statement was too little too late. I'm going to ask you, Terrika, what you think of it, but I just want people to know what the WNBA said. And their statement read, the WNBA is a competitive league with some of the most elite athletes in the world. While we welcome a growing fan base, the WNBA will not tolerate racist, derogatory, or threatening comments made about players, teams, and anyone affiliated with the league. League security is actively monitoring threat-related activity and will work directly with teams and arenas to take appropriate measures, to include involving law enforcement as necessary. Now, this is a pretty strong statement. The way that it's written, Terrika, is strong. But a lot of people felt like it was too little too late. What are your thoughts on the statement?
I certainly can understand why folks would feel that coming at the end of the season and into the postseason feels like a reaction more so than being proactive to what players have been complaining about practically all season. It isn't as if Alyssa Thomas is the first player this year to say something about how a certain group of people who are, for lack of better terms, saying that they're fans, saying that they enjoy the WNBA, but acting very differently, right? And so I don't want to necessarily attribute it specifically to any fan base. Again, as you said, Alyssa Thomas mentioned the Indiana Fever because that's her experience. Dejanay Carrington also mentioned the Indiana Fever because that was her experience in a previous comment that she had made on Twitter. But nevertheless, no matter what team it is that you represent, it is not the first time that a WNBA player has mentioned that there has been racist attack, death threats, and all types of things that have come to them this season. And so it feels as if for the better part of this season, those who have had the opportunity to make a statement have been dismissive in that. And so for those who have criticized, saying, yes, this sounds good and it's great, but why couldn't this have been a statement that was made by the WNBA earlier? I feel like they are valid in thinking and feeling that way.
Yeah, and listen, I think part of me is, I agree. I understand why people feel that way. Terrika, I think I am just happy that we're finally at this place and it's no longer an elephant in the room. I'm not pleased. I don't think this is enough. That's not what I'm saying. But we can't even begin to fix and address a problem
if you don't acknowledge that the problem exists.
Exactly. And so I hate that it took so long to get here, but I'm now glad that we're here. And like I mentioned, this statement by Alyssa Thomas, there was so much things that ensued as a result of it. But while this was all going on, there was just so much noise around the Connecticut Sun Indiana Fever series. And you mentioned Dejanay Carrington. She was sitting on the podium next to Alyssa. But during that series, after game one, she had an incident where she, according to her, unintentionally hit scratch Caitlin Clark in the eye, making an attempt on the ball. And I'm saying unintentionally because that's what Dejanay said when being asked about it. But when she was asked about whether or not, she intentionally hit Caitlin, because Caitlin had like a very, I'm saying minor because I saw Caitlin after game one and I didn't even notice it. So I'm saying it's minor because I was sitting right in front of the girl and I didn't see it.
Right.
We know sometimes you can, like, if black and blue, whatever it is, like, it can appear later. So maybe that's what it was, but it was still pretty small. It wasn't like a big, crazy black eye. Caitlin herself said it was a play on the ball. She laughed off any idea, dismissed it, any notion of this being intentional and not a play on the ball. But when Dejanay Carrington was asked about it, a reporter seemed to insinuate in the question, did you intend to do this? Now, Dejanay said no, but then the follow-up question was about whether or not she was laughing about it with Marina Mabrey, which Dejanay took, some offense to and said, well, I just told you that I wasn't even aware that it happened and it wasn't intentional, so why would I be laughing about something I didn't know that happened? And obviously I'm paraphrasing Dejanay. So this interaction happened. It set social media ablaze. A lot of people were criticizing the reporter. The reporter is Christine Brennan. And after that series ended, the WNBPA, the players union, put out a very strong statement about Christine Brennan's interaction with Dejanay Carrington. And I was shocked when I saw this statement. It was 5 parts. It took 5 parts when they posted it, but I'm just going to read some of the strong language. So in part 2 of the statement in their message, a message on behalf of the 144, to unprofessional members of the media, like Christine Brennan, you are not fooling anyone. That so-called interview in the name of journalism was a blatant attempt to bait a professional athlete into participating in a narrative that is false and designed to fuel racist, homophobic, and misogynistic vitriol on social media. You cannot hide behind your tenure, right? They went on, and initially in their statement, they started out by saying they waited till after that series because they didn't want to take away from players and the games that had been going on. Right? In the next part of their message, they said, instead of demonstrating the cornerstones of journalism, ethics like integrity, objectivity, and a fundamental commitment to truth, you have chosen to be indecent and downright insincere. You have abused your privileges and do not deserve the credentials issued to you. And you certainly are not entitled to any interviews with the members of this union or any other athlete in sport. Those credentials mean that you can ask anything, but they also mean that you know the difference between what you should and should not. We see you. And then they had another part of their message, but they concluded their message in part 5, and they said, we call on USA Today Network to review its principles of ethical conduct for newsrooms and address what we believe is a violation of several core principles, including seeking and reporting the truth. USA Today Sports should explain why a reporter with clear bias and ulterior motives was assigned to cover the league. We also urge the league to review its policies and take measures to prevent such issues, protecting the integrity of the game and its players. Terrika, I've never seen something like this from a players union. I've never seen, I'm not saying it hasn't happened. I just, in my time covering sports, in my time of being a sports fan, I cannot recall a union calling out a member of the media by name and making such a strong statement, I was really shocked that this occurred.
I was very shocked, and you know, I'll be honest, it is a difficult position to be in for a couple of reasons, right? As a working member of the media, as someone who covers sports, as someone who covers this league and have for years, as someone who has spent the last 3 years specifically talking to players after every game, interviewing players, having one-on-one conversations with players, there is a slippery slope that you incite when you talk about removing someone's credentials because of a question that maybe you didn't like. Right? And I think that is an important difference, that I don't believe it is simply, oh, we didn't like that question, so we're calling for this person's credentials. I think it is, simply put, reading the room, right? Understanding that as journalists and as members of the media, like we do have a responsibility to truth, and we do have a responsibility to objectivity, but we also have to think about not only our safety, but the safety of those who we cover. And I think that in a setting like that, knowing what the mass perception of, knowing that in the fan base that you covered, there's this mass perception of what occurred, those questions did not, to me, appear to seek truth. It was, and if that was the intent, to seek truth, the truth was answered in the first question. If there was anything further, for me, had it been me, I may have reached out to the team's PR, may have reached out to the player's agent. Maybe I'd like to have more of an in-depth conversation. And that's how I would approach doing so that it doesn't come across as if I am trying to antagonize or bait an athlete into saying something that could incite a fan base or a group of people into thinking that it's something other than what it is. But I feel as if the 144, the players in their union, felt that this was so egregious that they could not continue to allow someone to put their players in this position. So I understand it is indeed a slippery slope, but I also understand why the players felt the need. It's very similar to how just a couple of years ago, there's a new media rule that media is not allowed into the locker rooms, right? And there was a huge thing between some media members who felt like, wow, denying our access to the locker room is going to, hurt how we cover. And maybe for you, maybe it does make a difference for how you cover. But the players took a stand, and I don't know what happened. I am not saying something happened at all. Maybe nothing happened. Maybe they just decided, you know what, we want the locker room to be a place that's specifically for us, and we don't really feel comfortable having media there anymore. Maybe nothing happened at all. But at the end of the day, they together took a stand to say, this is what we want to do. And as media members, we have to respect that, right? And operate within that. And so I think that this was a situation in which, as media members, as someone, I ask tough questions when I need to, when it's relevant. You know what I mean? I criticize. I cover the Connecticut Sun, but when they stink, I say, guys, you stink. You know what I mean? You have to do what you have to do. However, there is still a level of integrity and respect that comes along with that. And I think the Players Union felt that that line of integrity and respect had been crossed. And that is why they felt the need to issue that statement.
Yeah, well, it's important to point out that USA Today Sports did issue a response to the union, and they are not in agreement with the union. Their response said, journalists ask questions and seek truth. At USA Today, our mission is to report in an unbiased manner. We reject the notion that the interview perpetuated any narrative other than to get the player's perspective directly. Christine Brennan is well regarded as an advocate for women and athletes, but first and foremost, she's a journalist. And that was a statement from Roxana Scott, USA Today Sports executive editor. So, obviously there were a lot of people who were not feeling this response, and there have been a number of journalists who have also tweeted on behalf of Christine Brennan, who is considered a pioneer, especially as a woman in the sports space. I think of this like the way that, my background is that I'm an employment lawyer, and I feel like a lot of this sounds like training is needed, right? I think of unconscious bias training that I used to do. And what I mean by that is sometimes we carry biases that we are not aware of. And also, when you don't always experience things that other groups go through, you're not aware. So while your intent may not be to cause harm, you may not realize that you're causing harm. And there's been a lot of conversation around the WNBA, how we don't do this in men's leagues, we don't do this. And my answer to that is, so what? And people have said to me, well, what are the solutions? And I want to talk about potential solutions because I do think that's important.
Yep.
And I think there needs to be training, right? Because I think that some media members maybe need to better understand intersectionality, which is at play in the WNBA. And by intersectionality, I mean, this is a league of Black women, largely, predominantly, not only, but their population is largely Black. They also have a large queer population. Their LGBTQ plus community is substantial. They are women, right? All of these things intersect together and they have unique issues for each one. And understanding how those different things are at play and how when you use certain rhetoric or write certain things, how that can impact them, how that can incite fans to go harass them on social media. These are things that I think there needs to be training. And I would love to see the league hire someone who is sort of in charge of assessing where the different issues are with media, with social media, fan engagement, whatever it is. And first, you need someone who can get a lay of the land, give them a team, give them real power, give them real authority, give them a team so they can come back and make recommendations. And this needs to be someone who understands, knows. You have to get the right person who understands intersectionality. And that way they can also advise the league, who I think also, from what I've seen, could use some training on it. Brittany Griner spoke to things that can be done too in terms of protecting your accounts and, not leaving all the hateful comments we see, on the WNBA's page, just sitting there for anyone to see. So those are a couple of, Brittany Griner proposed that. That's a solution I'm proposing. I'm just, I don't want to end it without asking, is there anything that you would like to see or do you have any solutions?
You know what? I would love. So we started this conversation with talking about how the WNBA has not shied away from taking a forward front-facing cause. I would love to see the WNBA add to their social justice issues cyberbullying. And to me, what that does is, it gives the WNBA an actual issue to stand in front of so that its players can get in front of to tackle. But I feel like it also works twofold. It charges the players to actively speak up, those who may not necessarily have always been feeling comfortable to do so. I think it gives them an opportunity to speak up on this issue, but I also think it puts some power in the hands of the fans. We've seen fans really get in front of the Black Lives Matter movement when the players did. We've seen fans get in front of gun violence awareness when the players did. I think by giving this a platform as to say, we as a league will no longer tolerate cyberbullying in this way, specifically as it relates to our players. Here is how we do that. It also gives some peer-to-peer checkage too. It would be very hypocritical for you to stand on this platform as a player and say, hey, we are standing up against cyberbullying, but allow that to occur on your personal page, to allow that to occur within your fan base. It really forces you to have to say, if this is a cause that we're going to undertake, we've got to be serious about it. I also think as fans, it allows you to say, hey, this is a cause that my favorite player stands up for. And if I see you doing this as a fan, I can say, hey, we don't do that in this fan base. Hey, we don't talk like that about these players that we love. So I think that it is a way for us to tackle it in multi-fronts and really give it some, because it's not just happening in the WNBA either, right? And one thing we've learned about the WNBA is that it certainly loves to stand up and be a voice for the voiceless. And so this is an issue that, while it is immediately affecting the players here, specifically with the racist comments, specifically with the sexist, misogynistic, and bigot that we've seen really grapple to a fan base and use that as a way to spew hate, I think that making it just a formal platform and a formal cause that the WNBA will own really could help minimize some of the things that we've seen this season.
That's an excellent suggestion, Terrika. Look, I don't know if the league is watching, but I hope that you will consider some of these suggestions that Terrika and I proposed today, including Brittany Griner's, who we referenced, which was also a great suggestion. We just want to see these players thrive. We want to see this league grow, but I align with the players in saying that it's not something that they have to tolerate, the hatred and the bigotry. And so looking forward to seeing the league, how they will progress with addressing this and making it a safer place for not only the players, but the media and the fans, everyone who is a part of this community taking part in it, making it a safer place for all of us.